Hello everyone and welcome to this in-depth guide to the Trapper of Dead by Daylight. In this guide we'll explore all there is to know about the Trapper, including his base stats, the effect of his add-ons, and some strategies that can be used to catch those pesky survivors. It's important to know that this guide is up to date as of patch 1.9.4. If any changes are made to the Trapper, I'll do my best to make an update video and link it in the description down below. Trapper is a killer that was once high on the tier list. Being the strongest defense killer in the game, he has changed quite a bit. As other killers have been released and balance changes were implemented, Trapper is probably one of the most nerfed killers in the game. So much so, his add-ons and power no longer matter in today's meta. This leaves poor Trapper in an underutilized state. Even with the great nerf hammer being brought down upon the Trapper, he is still a base level killer capable of some interesting plays. Using his power of bear traps, he can cut off escape routes and prevent large loops that other killers normally could not. At base, the Trapper is an average killer sporting 115% movement speed. This power gives him a total of 6 traps, 5 on the field and 1 in hand. Trapper can only carry 1 trap at a time and requires 5 seconds to place that trap. After a trap is placed, he can go pick up another one and then continue to place that as well. Trapper remains an easy to learn character and great for beginners. But with the way his traps work, it requires him to preemptively set up before he actively hunts in order to take full advantage of his traps. Setting traps around the map at crucial locations is vital to his strategy. Each map has its own locations, and it would be a guide of its own to explore the 20+ maps within Dead by Daylight to find all the valuable locations. Instead, we'll be focusing more towards the power of what the benefits to his add-ons actually are. Throughout the history of Dead by Daylight, Trapper's ability has not aged well. The trap placement is 5 seconds long. 2 seconds of this placement is animation that is not included in the actual action speed, and this means that the 2 seconds will remain unaffected by add-ons that would increase this speed. The major downfall of this power is that all of the survivor actions to escape the Trapper are significantly faster than the Trapper using it himself. Being able to disarm the trap at nearly half the time can be damaging to the Trapper's entire strategy. On top of that, they're capable of destroying the traps throughout sabotage, rendering the power completely useless if they sabotage all traps. Trapper is a rare killer at the higher ranks, so don't expect people to readily sabotage your traps. The only method they have to do so is running the perk Saboteur or having a toolbox in hand. So while we know the power, let's explore the add-ons and what they actually do. First we have the settings set, original name, do not steal. These add-ons are to allow Trapper to place traps faster. They are extremely valuable, and even the common version rates very well with the others. The rarities don't actually vary too much in speed. You get about 4% in difference per rarity. Additionally, you can stack them to nearly half the placement speed, but remember, this only affects the 3-second action speed and will not alter the 2 seconds of animation. Meaning when you have half the speed of placement, you're actually placing 1.5 of the 3 seconds, giving you a total of 3.5 seconds of placement for each trap. Using these add-ons alone are helpful enough as it can help to combat survivors that will stalk you and break traps as you place them. Next we have one of 2 coil sets. The coil tool set is the anti-sabotage add-ons. This sounds great, being this add-on would protect our traps from a massive threat that could otherwise leave us without any power to use. However, you couldn't be any further from the truth. Sabotage is at base 16 seconds long. This is a remarkable amount of time for a normal toolbox. If the Saboteur perk is used, then it will take a total of 24 seconds. Being that we already mentioned Trappers being rare and how uncommon it can be to find Saboteur builds, countering Saboteur comes at a risk of it not existing at all. Then by wasting an add-on to increase the time by 3.4 seconds is not a worthwhile investment, but more of a waste. There's no alerts to your traps being touched other than they're being disarmed, or the destruction is already complete. Increasing the time it takes to destroy the trap itself will provide no real benefit. Once they're doing it, they're going to complete it unless you're watching your trap. If they fail the skill check, you can gain some benefit, such as an alert there on the trap itself, but reviewing the comparisons we've added to the bottom right of the infographic, you'll see that the slightly zone is hardly any smaller. On top of this, using that very rare bloody coil has a massive drawback. Not only will you be likely able to play this against nothing, but you're also increasing your set time by an entire second. This is one of the worst penalties you can force upon yourself, because none of the add-ons from the setting set can actually counter this. The considerably increased setting time does not match this slightly increased setting time. With these coils, we also have tools that continue to make life harder. Fastening tools is the only add-on that provides an increase to the disarm time of traps, a valuable asset to have in an add-on. Additionally, being a moderate increase should be some serious benefit, right? Wrong. Fastening tools' increase to time required to disarm is by a mere 0.4 seconds, while the increase to time to place the trap itself is an entire second. They're still able to disarm the trap faster than you can place them. Remember that sabotage and skill checks do not apply to the disarms themselves. Though the 0.4 seconds could make a slight difference during a chase, the time required to get this all placed in the first place will hurt you in the long run. If you can avoid these at all costs on your blood web, as they provide nothing but a complete waste of blood points and loadout space. Then we have a coil spring set. This set is primarily focused on reducing the chance of escape and rescue time, and this set is no better than the last. The two add-ons here provide the effect that make no difference when it comes to a massive drawback of increasing the setting time by an entire second. The minimal chance increase that someone does not escape a bear trap will go unnoticed, guaranteed. The amount of time added to the rescue time is very minimal, and you won't be able to act upon it if they were truly too far away. Consider avoiding these springs as much as possible, as they continue to prove to be a waste of blood points. Now that the worthless sets are out of the way, let's explore the sharp set, a more utility and useful base set than the prior mentioned. The two jaws here are unique as they provide status effects that can combine with some other builds. Serrated jaws provide a hemorrhaging effect, which causes heavy bleeding. This is similar to the effect of Sloppy Butcher. Once they heal, the effect fades. Rusted Jaws is a superior perk in general, as it affects a survivor with Mangled, requiring an additional 4 seconds of heal time to fully recover. The effect cannot be cleansed, and it makes it a pain for survivors who have been trapped. The only downfall is that Sabotage will be 2 seconds faster, but as previously mentioned of the two prior sets, it's not common that you'll see this happen. Honing Stone is possibly less attractive out of the two stones as well, being it relies heavily on RNG. It may or may not work, and for how often survivors fall into traps, it just might seem like it doesn't work at all. Diamond Stone, on the other hand, works wonders. You don't need to be near a trap, and it single-handedly drops survivors, preventing them from escaping if you're too far. Running Deerstalker in combo with this will prevent them from hiding from your gaze. For being an ultra-rare add-on, it holds no negative side effects and is never a bad choice when you feel like trapping is the way. The die set is useful in certain scenarios. In most maps, the dark ground makes it easy to hide these traps as they get darker. It can be hard to see them in Autohaven Wreckers, Macmillan Estate, or even Coldwind Farm maps. These traps typically fail at indoor levels such as Treatment Theater or The Game, as the floor is bright and white, which makes the die stand out heavily when you darken it to a near black. Being the die is situational, it still isn't half bad of a choice as long as you're not stuck using two coil sets. Being able to place your traps directly under pallets without the survivors being able to clearly see them can lead to some easy kills. Never underestimate the power of Tar Bottle. Finally, we move on to the final and arguably the best set, the bag set. These bags increase the amount of traps allowed to be carried in hand and increase the total amount of traps in game. This helps set up for some serious defensive plays, as you have the ability to secure half a map no problem with the amount of traps you'll have. Just remember that the additional traps will already start in hand when you begin the game. Bags hold no negative side effects and only allow you to increase your arsenal. They combine well with any other perk set, excluding the horrid coil sets, since nothing combines well with those in the first place. These bags should be a high priority on the blood web when leveling the trapper, as an attempt to salvage as many useful add-ons as you can. So do the trapper perks help at all? The three teachables he has are Brutal Strength, Agitation, and Unnerving Presence. Brutal Strength is simple as it takes our pallet destruction speed of 2.36 seconds and increases it by 20%. This leaves us with a solid 1.9 second destruction, but puts us at more around 2 seconds with animations that are not altered by the action speed. Agitation is by far his most useful perk, as perk applies well to all killers, increasing their movement speed when they carry a survivor on their shoulder. This perk is heavily used to secure hooks and also punish survivors who think they have time to body block you and get away. With this perk, you'll be faster than a sprinting survivor, allowing you to catch up and attack them. Just be aware that you can't lunge while carrying a survivor, so you will have to approach them pretty closely. Unnerving Presence is a perk that works well at the lower ranks but drops off as people grasp the concept of hitting skill checks. Overall, this perk has some major flaws. On the infographic, we provided the difference in skill checks and what it looks like to compare. The issue here is that it decreases the size of the good skill checks but keeps great skill checks the same. This can make it easier to focus on landing great skill checks, making this a punishing perk at the end of the day. However, it does work well with things like Overcharge that have a small skill check by slightly decreasing that skill check even further. You take tiny skill check and make slightly tinier. In certain situations you may find use for this perk, but on the Trapper itself it does not serve an extremely useful purpose. With all that being said, the Trapper provides add-ons that are fairly weak and his perks are less than stellar. Using Brutal Strength won't lead to much of an advantage with the additional 0.36 second break, but it can help in the long run when there's tons of pallets to break. As Trapper, it is very vital for you to understand where to place traps. Tall grass is a magnificent spot. There are some crucial locations that you'll be placing them all the time, such as near the killer shack right at the window, or in tall grass right outside the pallets, or hell, sometimes if you want to waste some time of the survivor, you'll put it right in the pallet line so they can't run in there without disarming the trap. Some of the big things to understand about the Trapper is placing in unpredictable locations, even in random spots or at the edge of loops instead of directly in the path of pallets, can help you avoid disarming your traps because they'll be looking for it at the pallets instead of around the corner in tall grass. Also, if you notice here, I'm waiting to hit the survivor when he is outside of the trap. If you're using on-hit effects, they only apply when the survivor is not in the trap. The trap also does not count as a hit, so for example, if you run something like Remember Me, you must strike them when they are not in the trap, and a trap's hit does not proc NOED, it does not proc Remember Me, or any on-hit effects. For how many maps there are, just understand it's not possible for me to go through in one guide and explain all the locations. However, cutting off loops and being as unpredictable as possible is key. On top of that, you want to make sure that you set time at the beginning of every match to make sure you set up traps. Do not begin hunting until you have at least 2 down, so that when survivors begin to loop you, they may run into the trap if you've placed it correctly. Otherwise, your trap may be too obvious and they go around it or disarm it because they're stalking you. You need to keep this all in mind, as you cannot go around without having this done, else risk being a normal-ass killer. Trapper's power does not come from being a proactive chaser, but instead an unpredictable, malicious trap. For any perk builds you try to do on Trapper, he usually does well with anything that covers your weaknesses. Personally, I'll run NOED to cover my endgame weakness, along with Remember Me to keep them in there with me as I hunt them down, Agitation or Iron Grasp to transport, and Barbecue Chili for some points and tracking at a distance. Otherwise, you can run things like Enduring if you want to eat those pallets for days, or Brutal Strength to break those pallets as fast as you can. Anything works with the Trapper, as he is the most base killer in the game. There is no one build that is overly superior for as long as your build covers your weaknesses and helps you to succeed. I do recommend running Hex Ruin, as that is the primary staple of every single killer, but I don't in some cases if I'm trying to let them get to the end game without any suspicion. However, it's Trapper, you'll likely have NOED. Another fun build for you all to try is called the Bitter Trapper build. I've ran that on my channel and you can see its full effects in the link in the description down below. That about wraps up what there is to know about the Trapper. If you want to check out another in-depth guide, check out The Shape. We've got numbers for him and some interesting tips that'll help you along the way. I'm off to my wedding, and I want to thank you all for helping me get this far. I especially want to thank all the patrons who made this guide possible, and I'll be working diligently to get the next guide up. I'll leave it to the patrons to vote for the next killer. If you wish to participate in that vote or download the infographics we have in this video, join me on Patreon for as little as $1. It helps support this channel and keep me working on the guides to help you learn the things that are a pain in the ass to research. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more videos to come. And as always, good game.